Hello everyone and welcome to today's Times Journeys webinar, Myanmar Behind the Headlines. My name is Victoria Hanson and I'm the Programme Manager here at the New York Times for Times Journeys. During the next 40 minutes, you will hear about this incredible country as Rami Girgis of Abercrombie & Kent walks you through our 10-day itinerary, and Stephen Erlinger, the New York Times London Bureau Chief and journalist accompanying the tour, discusses his experience of the country formerly known as Burma. But before we dive in, why travel with the New York Times? Well, first and foremost, on each of our 125 plus departures, you'll be accompanied by either a New York Times journalist or Times selected expert. From New York Times editorial board members and our foreign correspondents who have reported from the ground to subject matter experts, they will share their insights and knowledge with each of our travellers. We offer a programme of small group tours and specialist cruises, over 55 itineraries in total, with the land-based trips capped at 26 guests. And we visit destinations that tell a story, Myanmar being a case in point, but also the bucket list classics of Provence and the Galapagos Islands, exploring everything from politics and history to the arts or science. And finally, exclusive access. Each tour excludes opportunities to escape the crowds to gain a more authentic experience, from backstage tours to in-home cooking demonstrations. So now let's look specifically at our Myanmar trip. It is a 10-day, 9-night tour. All accommodation is included, most meals, your transfers, your tour manager, and your local guides as well. You'll have 3 nights in Yangon, 2 nights in Hay Ho, 2 nights in Mandalay, and 2 nights in Bagan. There are, of course, many historic sites and highlights visited on this tour, a few of which include the Shwe Dagon Pagoda, complete with its 8,688 solid gold slabs, the Ananda Temple in Bagan, which is nearly 1,000 years old, and the Shwenendor Monastery and Cathedral Pagoda as well. Beyond the architecture, Times Journeys guests will hear some incredible people as they share their memories and experiences with our group. The highlight for this group is our visit on day 9 to meet Ma Thenagi, the former personal assistant of Daw Aung San Suu Kyi, as she talks about her memories and her experiences with this incredible woman. You'll also get to meet and talk with a monk from a monastery in Mandalay and enjoy a cookery lesson in a local village before dining with your hosts. Now, joining you throughout the 10 days is Stephen Erlinger, currently the New York Times London Bureau Chief, but who has reported from an incredible 120 countries, if Wikipedia is to be believed. He was based in Bangkok for 3 years and shares a Pulitzer Prize for explanatory reporting on Al-Qaeda. From the democracy revolution in Burma to the refugee plight after the crackdown on the democracy movement to his meeting Aung San Suu Kyi, I'm delighted to welcome him live from London to give you a taste of some of the topics he'll be discussing on tour. Stephen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Victoria. First of all, to all of you listening, I hope the sound is good, and it's a pleasure to talk to you. I'm really, really looking forward to this, I have to say. Myanmar, or Burma, as perhaps we might call it, is one of the cherished places of my career. I've been in many countries, as Victoria said, some of which have long disappeared. But what fascinated me always about Burma was its transformation, its great history, as we know, its importance for Buddhism, its role during World War II, which the British will long remember, the road to Mandalay, after all. But when I first came to Southeast Asia, it was in the very strong hands of a rather crazed leader called Nain, was a mystic and believed in the stars, and all currency was only divisible by 9, because 9 was for Ne Win, the lucky number. And I was really fortunate to be there when so-called democracy revolution began. And Burma was the military controlled it, but I went in on one of the very first tours that took place after the military reestablished control. And I went in as an economist. I would never say that I was a journalist, and brought my wife. And I slipped away and met Aung San Suu Kyi at her mother's house. I met her now late husband and her children. And I wrote some of the first profiles of her and took some of the first pictures of her, and I stayed in touch with her. In fact, I quite loved when she finally was allowed out to get her Nobel Prize for Peace, which I think was awarded in '91. I went to Oslo just to cover her speech and to see her again. But you will find the country magically transformed. In some ways, of course, modern in an ugly way, but in general, a much happier place for a lot of people. There was a kind of deep repression, almost a sort of slavery. And what we've seen is this remarkable transformation, not a perfect one, but a transformation very recently toward another real democratic vote. And now we have the prospect of Aung San Suu Kyi and her party running the government of this new country, this new old country. The military will still have a very big presence, that's for sure, but she is banned having married a foreigner from becoming president, but she will control from behind and probably be foreign minister. The country has all kinds of political problems, but that should not get in the way of its sheer magical beauty. There's something so exotic about the temples of Pagan at dawn, of the liveliness of Yangon as a city, of the beauty of a people that in a way was kept in aspect for a very, very long time, and which is now re-engaging the world. They're some of the nicest people, very attractive people, and they'll be very grateful to see you. And I think you will find it very, very magical.
Fantastic. Well, it's going to be fantastic having you both on the rest of the webinar today, and of course on the trip itself. And 10 days of questions, I'm sure, will be a definite highlight for everyone who's travelling with you, Stephen. So now I'd like to introduce Rami Girgis of Abercrombie in Kent to walk you through the tour specifics. Rami was born in Cairo, Egypt, where he studied and worked in Egyptology for many years, becoming the chief Egyptologist for a luxury Nile cruise line. Following his move to A&K in 2005, his role expanded significantly and now includes Asia, private jet, and special interest travel. Rami, welcome. Ready to talk all things Myanmar?
So, thank you, Tori. I've been to Myanmar. I've been very fortunate to go there a couple of times for the past few years. And as I was saying to Stephen earlier before we started the webinar, that one of the things that surprised me or kept surprising me is the pace and the fast pace of development that the country is going through. It's one of my personal favorite destinations, and I would urge the New York Times readers and those that are interested in going to Myanmar to book as soon as possible, because again, the country is changing very quickly. We've developed this itinerary so that it captures the must-sees of Myanmar, in addition to access to people and locations that are not accessible or not heard of to the general public. The day one that we start in Myanmar, so we fly into Yangon, and it's much easier now to fly into Myanmar. There are many airlines that fly through Asia, such as Korean Air, Cathay Pacific, Qatar Airways, Etihad Airlines through Abu Dhabi. You can also very easily take a flight to Bangkok, and there are several flights between Bangkok and Yangon. Singapore Airlines flies there as well. So it's very easy to get to Myanmar now, and as soon as you arrive, regardless of if you want to arrive a day early or 2 days earlier, we can arrange accommodation for you. And but your transfer will always be available. You'll be pre-booked. Itself is about 45 minutes. Traffic in Yangon can get a bit crazy. It's a very busy city now. Again, if you arrive late at night, which most international flights do arrive late at night, there shouldn't be any traffic. And we're staying at a hotel that's right in the heart of the city, the Shangri-La Hotel in Yangon. It's about 5 minutes walking distance from Sule, one of the most beautiful pagodas in Yangon. We're staying in deluxe rooms, which have great views of the city. And this is the only hotel that we felt is centrally located, and we felt that it captures the essence of the city. There are many facilities there. It's a modern property. So there's a swimming pool, there's a spa, there's a gymnasium, and there is internet. Speaking of internet, there's going to be internet wherever you travel on this itinerary. It does slow down when you leave Yangon. So if there is something that you need to get done or download a lot of emails or download files, that would be the place to do it before you get off to Heiho or Bagan or Mandalay. Switching to day 2. So we start the day with the most beautiful pagoda in all of Myanmar, Shwedagon Pagoda. It dates back to, it goes back to 2,500 years, and it is really an architectural masterpiece. In fact, I've always taken pictures. So it's just gorgeous. You can't stop taking pictures. It is a golden fantasy of stupas and mythical beasts. It's an incredible place. You can easily spend a full day in this place. But we will have a Burmese expert traveling with us who's very familiar with all these pagodas and temples, and he will bring all these stories to life of the construction of the pagoda and with the symbolism of all the beasts and or the creatures that we're going to see depicted on the walls. After this, we're going to take a short drive to the reclining Buddha, and it's a 230-foot Buddha, and it's quite different from that you see in Wat Po in Bangkok. It's the construction is different, the material is different. This monastery on its own, where the reclining Buddha statue is, it's actually home to 600 monks who are actively living and practicing there. And no trip to Yangon is complete without stopping at Scott's Market. So after this, we take a short drive to Scott's Market, and there is some time on your own to walk around, browse the local stores, see the consumer goods that they sell. They sell pretty much everything from fruits and vegetables to electronics. So it's only 5 minutes from the hotel, so you can easily walk back to the hotel, take a short walk back to the hotel, or you can drive back to the hotel. The next day, we fly to Heiho, and we take a motorboat ride to Inle Lake. And Inle Lake is situated on the Shan Plateau. It is a gorgeous place, one of my favorite places in all of Myanmar. Like I said, it's an oasis where you see a very unique method of farming and fishing that sustains the local residents there. So what happens is the government sells plots of land to the farmers and the local women too, where they grow vegetables, cauliflower, cucumbers, cabbage, what have you. And they rely a lot on agriculture and also on fishing, which is quite unique. As you can see in the picture, this is someone fishing. They do that by using a conical trap that has a net. So they throw it in the water, and as soon as they see movement, they pull it out. All of this while they're rowing the boat with one just standing around for support. Very unique, and it's a must-see while in the lake, and you're going to see it everywhere you go. On this day, we will also see some of the most beautiful pagodas, which is Pongdu U Pagoda, and it enshrines 5 golden Buddha images that were actually transported to Myanmar in the 12th century. We're going to see also the Ngapa Chung Monastery, which was built over over part of the lake, and it has an impressive Buddha image in the Shan Tibetan Bagan style. We have some time at leisure. We're going to be staying in while in the lake at the Pristine Lotus Resort. So it's a beautiful resort, and it's good to have some time to enjoy the facilities of the resort. There's a pool, there's a spa, and there's also a natural hot spring on site. The rooms are quite spacious. They're more of a bungalow-style rooms. They're 1,076 square feet, so very spacious with a living room and, of course, air conditioned. The next day, we're going to see a new site that is quite unique to Inlilik, which is the 5-day market. And this market rotates or changes places every 5 days, hence the name. And we're going to see interact with a lot of villagers. We're going to a home of one of the locals, and the chef will not only talk to us about his life in Indy Lake, but he will take us to the local market and go and shop with him for ingredients of a meal that you're going to go back and cook next to him. So it's a good way to immerse into that local culture and understand the Shan cuisine, which is pretty popular in Myanmar. And you share a meal together. What a way to experience Myanmar like a local. We're going to also on this day in the afternoon take a cruise to Indane, which is built on a side of a hill in the southwest corner of the lake. We're going to walk through other villages too, and take that stunning view of Inly Lake. Make sure that you have a lot of memory cards because you're going to take a lot of pictures, especially in Inly Lake. The next day, which is day 5, we're going to fly into Mandalay. And Mandalay is a very different city, if you will. It's a quite unique city. And different from the rest of Myanmar. It's more structured, established with a good, strong, well-established infrastructure. So while in Mandalay, we jump into day 6 now. While in Mandalay, we're going to visit some of the most beautiful monasteries. One of them is the Shwenendam Monastery. Shwenendam Monastery was actually destroyed by fire in World War II, but you can still see the excellent craftsmanship as you walk around the building. And actually, you can still go inside. It's safe to walk inside on the first floor. In Shwenendam Monastery, we take a short drive to Kutado Pagoda. And in Kutado Pagoda, they call it the world's biggest book. It's more of a large, very large monastery, and it has stupas all around. And inside each small stupa, there is a slab. And that slab has, each slab has part of the Buddhist canon. And there are 729 of them. It's mind-boggling. And after this, we're going to take a drive to a gold leaf workshop. Now, it's not necessarily a shopping experience, but it is an opportunity to see where the locals buy the golden leaves that they put on the statues of the Buddha. It's the only one of its kind in Myanmar. They show you how they beat the gold, how they come to this very fine, thin layer of gold that they sell. And you see men at work doing it. It's all manual. Until this very day, it's all manual. And after this, we go to Mahamuni Pagoda, which dates back to 1784, and it has a very large statue of the Buddha right in its center. On day 6, we fly to Bagan. And Bagan is a very special place, one of the holiest places in all of Myanmar. There are over 2,000 pagodas. Everywhere you practically look, there is a small pagoda. It dates back to the 11th century. And one really unique way to see Bagan is with a hot air balloon, but more on that in a little bit. In Bagan, we're going to see some of the most amazing temples and pagodas. One of them is Shwezagam Pagoda. and it dates back to 1102 AD. And it's said that inside the pagoda there is the bone and the tomb, and it has some of Bagan's finest frescoes. We're going to see another very unique temple, which is a total and 140 feet wide. One way to see Bagan is at sunset, and you need to see that from the temple or from the river. So Bagan is right on the Irrawaddy River, and you would take a cruise during sunset on the Irrawaddy River to see the most amazing sunset in all of Myanmar. On day 8, so this would be a perfect day to go on a hot air balloon ride. Now, this is an activity that is not included in the program. It is, however, if you are interested, you can. I urge you to pre-book this because it sells out really quickly. It costs $325 a person, and we can assist with that in advance. Again, it's not for everyone. It requires early morning, of course, wake up around 4:30 to get there on site to be by 5. So it's not really for everyone, but it is a very unique way to get a bird's eye view of Bagan. One of the methods of transportation that's quite popular in Bagan is a horse cart. So why don't we try it like a local? Get on a horse cart and we take a ride to the Ananda Temple, which is one of the best preserved temples in Bagan. 1090. We're going to take a stop at a lacquerware shop to see the art of this ancient craft, and later on we take a short walk through a local village. One thing that you notice in Myanmar is that the villages, they're not tourist villages, they're actual local villages where people live and shop and eat and drink. People are not going to be pushing you to buy anything from them. They're not catering to foreigners. They're just, some of them may have never seen Western people before or non-Burmese people before. So it's a very unique way, and you get very touched by these people who are seeing foreigners for the first time. Very, very fascinating. And I traveled, the last time I traveled with a group of travel agents who just grabbed their phones quickly and they were taking selfies with the locals, and it was an amazing experience to see well-traveled Asians and so excited, like they've never seen anything like that before. In Bagan, there aren't so many lodges, but we are staying in a new lodge called Bagan Lodge. It's all villas, and we'll be having each booking will have its own villa within the lodge. They have ensuite bathrooms with a bathtub, separate shower, and it's a 538 square foot. On day 9, we're going to fly back to Yangon. And so we will be staying back at the Shangri-La. And it's a day. That said, because we understand that some people may be leaving in the morning on day 10, and that's perfectly fine. The room is yours to keep for the night, and just then in the morning we'll transfer you to the airport. If you're leaving in the evening, then that works as well. We have scheduled the activities so that after the farewell dinner, or the farewell dinner is done at a good time where you can make your international flight. So we fly back to Yangon, and we go straight to Chinatown. And Chinatown it's called Chinatown, but there are a lot. It's a very Burmese market. There is fruits, vegetables, spices, you name it, that are sold there, and the guides will thrill your senses with the stories of what all these spices mean and who shops there. And of course, we schedule the activity at a good time where it's not so busy, because it can get really busy at the market. We take a small stop at a synagogue. And the Yeshua synagogue is the oldest and the last remaining synagogue in all of Myanmar. So we'll walk around the synagogue, and the caretaker will take us inside to show us some of a very old Torah, in fact, the oldest in all of Myanmar. And then one of the main highlights of the trip, which is to talk to Matanigi, the former personal assistant of Aung San Suu Kyi. Which we touched on earlier. Aung San Suu Kyi as the leader of the National League for Democracy Party in Myanmar. Now, Matanagi was her personal assistant for many years and was actually imprisoned with her for 3 years. And after release, she will share with us many and many stories of the time she spent with Aung San Suu Kyi. And with that, I will turn it over to.
Thanks, Rami. I think we might be having a few technical problems with we've been plagued. So before I open it up to FAQs there, would you mind just recapping a little bit around the Shwedagon pagoda that you mentioned in day 7? It broke up a little bit, and I think it might be one of those highlights that people would love to hear a little bit more about.
Absolutely. Day 7, we are in Bagan, and that is the day we fly into Bagan. In Bagan is, like I said, it's very famous for its temples, and it's over 2,000 pagodas all over Bagan. We can't visit 2,000 pagodas or we're going to get pagoded out. So we visit the highlights and the must-see pagodas in Bagan, and those that carry a lot of significance. The first one we see is going to be Shwedagon Pagoda. Shwedagon Pagoda is a smaller pagoda, a much smaller pagoda than the pagodas that we've seen in Yangon. But it's all gold. It was in fact my first pagoda to see in Myanmar, and just right there I snapped 400 pictures in one site. So it's all the gold and the mythical creatures and the statues, which is again all covered in gold against a blue sky. You can't help it but to just keep on snapping pictures. It dates back to 1102 AD, and it's said that it enshrines a bone and a tooth from the Buddha. So it's of course a pilgrimage site for the Burmese people. After this, we visit the Kubyaki Temple, which dates back to the 13th century. And inside is a unique site that you see a lot of frescoes, and not necessarily just statues, but a lot of frescoes. And some of the finest frescoes in all of Burma are inside Kubyaki Temple. We take a short drive afterwards to Tolomilo Temple, which is one of the largest in Bagan. It's 150 feet high and 140 feet wide. And I was saying that there's no better way to see Bagan's sunset than from the river. So there's the Irrawaddy River, very scenic. So we take a cruise, a small cruise, for about an hour through the river to watch the sunset with the temples in the backdrop, forming a backdrop. So it's a great way to end the day in Bagan.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Rami. There was a lot of detail that you went into there, and it would have been a shame for people not to hear it. And thank you, Stephen, as well. I mean, it's obviously one thing to read about a destination and quite another to hear both the passion and the memories behind the words as well. Now, as everybody's seeing, we've got a lot of frequently asked questions on the screen right now, and this is also your opportunity to ask both Rami and Stephen any questions that you might have as well. You'll be able to see a little panel on the right-hand side of your screen, and that's your opportunity to write those now, and we'll cover off as many as we can. If you're not able to find that panel, or you'd like to talk to one of our travel specialists separately to this, then please don't hesitate to do that. They can be reached on 855-698-7979. But let's dive in. The first question that we always get asked is international airfare included? And the short answer is no, we don't. And the main reason for that is because a lot of our travellers are very well travelled. They have so many air miles that they really like to use them. And so this will then give you the flexibility to do that. And as Rami said at the beginning, there are a lot of different airlines that connect into Myanmar nowadays. So there's plenty of options. Is it safe to travel to Myanmar? Definitely. The New York Times wouldn't be running a programme to a country that we didn't feel was safe, and it's one of the safest countries in the whole of Southeast Asia. What will the weather be like? This is the dry season, so you can expect highs of 82, lows of 68, so it's a fantastic time of year to go. It is quite a physical tour in as much as you're going to be walking around a number of different sites to see all of these pagodas, and there won't always be support as you're going up and down stairs, so we do ask that you can walk for 3 hours or so on uneven ground unaided. That won't be constant, of course. There will be rest stops, and you can certainly take some time for those pictures, the hundreds and hundreds of pictures that I'm sure you'll be taking just like Rami did. Do you need a visa? Yes. There are 2 types of visas that you can apply for, either a paper visa in your passport or an e-visa. There is a link on the presentation on the screen here that you can type into your computer to find more details. However, the visas are only valid for 3 months after they've been issued, so please don't apply for them too soon or they will have expired before the trip itself. What do I need to pack? Well, as it is quite an active trip and wandering around in highs of around 82 degrees Fahrenheit, it's best to take breathable fabrics and also to dress conservatively when you are in the temples. And any specific questions that you have around this, hopefully they'll be covered off with the pre-departure packing list that we'll be providing with each of our guests as well. The main requisite, just for ease though, is to wear shoes that can easily be slipped on and taken off, and so we recommend flip-flops for when you're walking around the temples. And finally, is it possible to use your cell phone there? Well, it's not possible to actually set your phone to roaming in the country. However, you can buy local SIM cards, and they will allow international calls. And with that, I'm going to open up and see if we have any other questions. I know that covered off an awful lot. General.
Victoria?
Yeah.
This is Steve. Just to say, while we're waiting, if people want to ask questions, one of the things Rami said just struck me very hard, and it's a very magical, spiritual place. The Buddha is not a god, but the Buddha did create a form of pattern for life for people, and it's almost impossible to go to a place like Pagan and not be moved by just the way you would be moved by Chartres Cathedral. Just the experience of people in relationship to their faith in very difficult circumstances, particularly in the past, really is irreplaceable. It's also just, you'll see things that you'll never have seen anywhere else. And as I say, it is really one of my very, very favorite places. And having been there at a time when, we couldn't really move around very much, when the only bottled water was called pH water and tasted like sodium and tasted very odd because they couldn't import hops. To watch the transformation will be quite extraordinary.
Yeah, I'm sure. And actually, a question's just come up that I'd love to hear your thoughts on, Stephen, there around the current state of the government and the transition that's going on at the moment.
Well, it's very, it's moving in personal terms. It's also moving in political, terms of what's going on in the whole region. Aung San Suu Kyi, was the child of the country's founder. She's like the daughter of George Washington. Only Aung San, her father, died when she was 2. So she doesn't really remember him. Her mother was an extraordinary figure. She was the first woman ambassador Burma ever had, the ambassador to India. And Aung San Suu Kyi ended up, being a Tibetan scholar and being an Oxford housewife. And then when her mother got ill, she went back to Yangon to take care of her mother, when suddenly the country exploded all around her as May Win was beginning to fall. And as the daughter of Aung San, she had this special importance for the people of the, and she saw it as almost her own fate, her own destiny, to try to lead Myanmar back to where she imagined her father would have led it after this long period of a military rule. So her story is itself quite amazing. And it's in the context of big changes in Asia, which is to some degree, as everyone tells us, the future. The influence now of Thailand and China on Burma, now that Burma has opened up, has been both good and bad. Burma's beautiful teak forests have been exploited badly, but there's been a lot of development too. And the fact that she was allowed finally by the military to run with her party in these elections, having been denied victory in elections decades ago, is a fascinating indication of how even the military has realized in the age of globalization, it can no longer remain isolated entirely from the world. There are issues, obviously, about the Rohingya who are and who have been suppressed by the military, and that has put her and her party, the NLD, the National League for Democracy, in an awkward position. But I believe that she will do her best to try to make life a little easier for the Rohingya. So it's a fascinating moment, a great transitional moment to be there. And frankly, that excites me as much as anything else.
Thank you. And we've had a question as well about how this trip's different from all of the other Myanmar trips out there. And actually, I think you talking just then, Stephen, really sums up what it is. It's adding the New York Times perspective that you don't get on any other programme. The fact that you'll be travelling with the New York Times Group for 10 days. And also it's about the like-minded travellers on this trip as well. We find that people come from all sorts of different backgrounds and quite often want to share their own stories as well about the trips that they've taken previously, about both their professional and personal lives. And it really then brings together a very special group of travellers as well. We've had a few questions around vaccinations and the need for malarial tablets and things like that. Now, I don't want to start getting into recommendations for health, but I would just suggest that you contact your healthcare professional who can advise you based on your own personal circumstances. And we've also had a question around, can the trips be extended? And I'm sure Rami would be delighted to help with that. So if anybody would like to book onto this trip, you'll be put in contact with Abercrombie and Kent very shortly afterwards, and they could then arrange for either a pre or a post-trip extension. Rami, is there anything else that you'd like to add to that?
We've had, there is Myanmar. You're in Southeast Asia, so and a lot of people think I might as well extend either within Myanmar or to do something different outside of Myanmar, probably Luang Prabang, or to do Angkor Wat. So these are some of our most popular trip extensions following a trip to Burma. And we'll be happy to arrange those for you, of course, and book accommodation and all of that.
Fantastic. Thank you. And then the final question, we've got two questions and they're sort of tied together quite nicely. So the first one is, will the trip be offered in future years? We don't have anything confirmed at the moment. If you are interested, then again, please call us and we can take your details. And if it does get added to the roster again, then we'll certainly let you know. The other question was around duration. And with that, I'm actually going to move it on to the very last page here, just for a very nice recap. So it's a 10-day trip from September the 5th to September the 14th. Limited to 24 guests, and we already have a number of people booked on, so there aren't that many spaces left. It's $5,395 a person, and the single supplement, if you are on your own, is $1,395 with the internal air cost of $565. Now, if you'd like a recap of this, I fully appreciate that we have had technical issues. If you would just like a printout of the itinerary, then we've attached it as a handout here, a copy of the dedicated Myanmar brochure, or else you can have a look on our website. Just go to timesjourneys.com and you'll be able to find the Myanmar trip there. I should say, though, that as it stands, this is the only offering that we have to this incredible country this year. So to get booked on or to ask any additional questions, then, as I say, call 855-698-7979. So with that, just before I wrap it up, I'd like to say thank you very much again, Stephen, for joining us all the way from London.
Pleasure.
And Rami for joining us from Chicago.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
And we hope to see everybody else in Myanmar with us in September. Thank you very much, everyone.